Do you ever find yourself concerned about the kind of person your children might marry, knowing that the marriage relationship is one of the most influential relationships on a person's life? So what can I do to assure that my children marry a person that will have a good, positive influence, particularly within their faith, on their lives? One of the things to consider is praying, and I mentioned this verse before. Proverbs 21:1 talks about how the heart of the king is in God's hands, and God turns it whichever way he wishes. That reveals to us that God has the ability to steer a person's heart, thought life, and feelings. He still ultimately lets them make choices, but God will come in and attempt to influence. And so if we begin to pray that God, and I pray this regularly for my kids, that they would be pure, that they would desire the right kind of person, someone who loves Jesus and is faithful, would be faithful to them, exhibits the fruit of the Spirit, mature in their faith, faithful to the Word. I pray that they would seek out a person like that and come across someone who would just be the right fit for them, that they would end up choosing to marry, and that God would make my children to be that same type of person. As this series would imply, we're seeking to bring that out into our children as well, but praying that our kids will be that way is also, and then praying that God at the right time will bring the two together and it would result in a successful marriage. So prayer is the first part of making sure our kids have a healthy marriage. The next thing is to start having conversations with them about what to look for in a spouse and pointing it out in others and explaining why these are valuable traits to have. As far as the qualities in a wife, of course, everybody always thinks of Proverbs 31, which I'll just highlight some of the traits that I see. There's a lot more words with the traits in Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31, but certain traits are really what's being highlighted. One is trustworthiness. And encourage your sons to look for a woman, and same for your daughters, to look for someone who is trustworthy, someone who treats others well, because the way they treat others is likely how they're going to treat you. Someone who contributes to society and the needs of others, someone who is supportive of other people, someone who is wise and makes wise choices, someone who has a healthy relationship with the Lord. These are qualities that the Bible specifies that are good in a wife, but they would be good in both a wife and a husband. Then when the Bible highlights the husband, it uses Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25 through 31. And it mentions being sacrificial. So encourage your daughters to look for a man who is sacrificial, to look for someone who looks to bring out good in other people, to look for a man who's affectionate and loving, to look for a man who uses good, right priorities in his life. These are all great qualities to make sure to highlight and mention why that's valuable when they struggle, when our kids struggle with relationships, even just friendships and family relationships. Point out to them why those things are difficult, and a lot of times they're related to these kind of qualities, and just point out, see, that person lacked that quality, that's why you struggled, or that person got upset with you because you lacked that quality, and point out the health that these qualities bring to a relationship and why you would want these in a person. Special items to mention for both a husband and a wife, and again, the other ones can apply to both as well. One is Genesis 2 says that a husband is to leave his mother and father and cling to his wife. Once a person is married, that person should become their top priority other than Jesus Christ. So no longer is the previous immediate family their priority. This person now becomes their priority. And we need to make sure we teach that, set up the stage for that. And when they are married, we need to make sure we allow for that as well, which is sometimes difficult for some people. Sexual purity. Hebrews 13:4 says, "Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous." So we want to teach them sexual purity, that sex outside of a heterosexual marriage is sinful, and we want to encourage them to maintain that purity. And we want to encourage them to seek out a person who has that same kind of value. Also, a strong relationship with Jesus. This was highlighted in Proverbs 31, but if you look at 2 Corinthians 6:14, says we are not to be unequally yoked, which refers really to all relationships, but it certainly is including marriage there, that we want to make sure that our children marry someone who's mature and strong in their faith, like our kids. If our kids are not strong and mature in their faith, they should not jump into marriage either. So we want to make sure, and that's why this is one of the big things I often say to my kids: when you look for a guy to marry, or when you look for a woman to marry, what should you always be looking for? And they know this now: someone who loves Jesus, because that is what's going to be the foundational point to a healthy marriage. Now, after they're married, and maybe you're listening to this and you have children that are grown up and they're already in marriage relationships, or they're in dating relationships, but certainly after they're married, or maybe you aren't there yet but preparing for that. At someday, most likely your kids will be married. A couple of principles to keep in mind when that happens. One, don't mess with the priority. Again, Genesis 2, the spouse takes priority over the parents now. So once your child is married, don't get in the way of that relationship. Make sure that you allow that relationship to blossom and become the priority. Proverbs 18:22 says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord." Encourage them to have a positive view of marriage. And the best way to do that is for you to have a positive view of marriage. And sometimes people have had difficult marriages and it's hard for them to do that. But maintain a positive view of marriage, of your own marriage as well as your children's marriage. This will promote health. Ephesians 5. Again, in there it mentions that husbands should nourish and cherish their wives as Christ does the church. Encourage affection in marriage. Don't discourage it. Some people are uncomfortable with PDA and those sort of things. Don't discourage that with a marriage relationship. Encourage your children who are married to be affectionate and to their wives, to their husbands, publicly even. Encourage them to show preference to each other. You could reference again Ephesians 5, the sacrificial husband, or Philippians 2, how we are to look out for each other's interests more than our own. Look for others' interests more than our own. Teach them to be sacrificial, to put the other person first. So many marriage conflicts come because one person decides they're going to get what they want. And that's a recipe for disaster. Encourage them to be sacrificial and showing preference to the other. Once again, in all these, just like all issues of parenting, your example is going to be the highest way, other than maybe prayer, to influence your children to do what you're wanting them to do. If you want them to have a good marriage, best way to start is for you to have a good marriage. The other day, my son said to Heather and I think you guys kiss twice as much as the average couple, which he meant it in like an embarrassing kind of way, but that we took that as a great compliment. You want to make sure that your kids know, not fake it, have a good marriage and make sure they see that, and that will make them long to have the kind of marriage you have. This will go a long way in raising your children to be married, and again, their walk with the Lord will be greatly impacted by who they choose to marry and the kind of marriage they have. So this is vitally important to parenting your children. If you have any questions regarding leading your children to a healthy marriage, or any of the videos in this series, feel free to comment. I would gladly answer your questions, or you could Facebook message me, or you can email me at dleveck@bethelpgh.org. And if you like the video, please share this with others. Please interact with it again by commenting, letting me know you like the video, or liking it, or again sharing it. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification button so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. If you're on Facebook, then please be sure to follow our page so again you're updated when videos are uploaded. Thanks for joining me, and let's go parent our children, pastoring them to be followers of Jesus.